Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we're going to be going over the best games I played in 2022. This is going to be a mix of both modern and retro games, so let's get into the list. So up first we have the DioFIELDS Chronicle. This one is much better than the user scores depict, and it's better than what the overall scores, the review scores, say. Don't let those fool you. This is a good game that takes place in a really fascinating world and has a very interesting story. At first, I didn't really like the combat system, but it did kind of grow on me as I played. I did have some problems with this game. Basically, you have a small party, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but they did kind of work around that by letting you use the special abilities from other party members that are not taking place in the battle. I kept thinking that I want to see more from this game's world. While I think there are some minor problems with it, I really hope that Square makes more games from this game's world, because it definitely deserves it. It's a game that really should be explored a lot more by the developers. Spiritfarer was just a really relaxing game. It was just so much fun to come to this after playing other stuff and just kick back, enjoy the world that this game takes place in, sail around, and try to help these different lost souls with their problems. And that's basically what you're doing in this game. You are helping a bunch of souls make their way to the afterlife. Each soul gives you different quests that you'll have to do. These can include, just feeding them stuff that they like to be fed, building homes for them, upgrading your ship and your buildings, growing different types of food, and visiting different islands, just so these different people can have some closure in their life. It's a very relaxing game, and it's just a lot of fun to sit back and play. General Chaos is an amazing game. It's also one of those unique games that EA used to make, or at least used to publish back when they cared. It's a combination of genres that doesn't sound like it should work, but somehow, it did, and it turned out to be just a great game. There is a story in this which is completely irrelevant to what's going on, and it's really not all that deep. It just sets up the rivalry between the two armies. It really doesn't matter. It's basically squad combat, which feels a little bit like a game of, aggressive capture the flag, where you actually are killing your opponents. It's just a ton of fun. You have a squad from anywhere from 2 to 5 players with different weapons on them, and you just move them around the screen trying to eliminate the other unit in order to advance. It's an absolutely wonderful game that I wish would get a remake. I remember this game being harder than it was. My best friend at the time introduced me to Tales of Destiny. He was stuck near the end of the game, and it seemed like it was so much harder to get past than it really was. And then when I played it again for this, I didn't have any issues with it whatsoever. This is a hybrid JRPG and action RPG. At the time, I don't remember seeing anything like it, but yeah, it's just a ton of fun. If you have never played any of the Tales games before, this one is a great, great one. I really do love it. I thought it was pretty easy, though, compared to some of the other Tales games I've played, especially coming back and revisiting it again later. It's an absolutely wonderful game, and that's why I made it on this list. Tales of Destiny is just awesome. I was so excited for Shredder's Revenge. This game looks and plays like it's a sequel to Konami's arcade games from the 90s. But it goes a little bit further than that by adding a bunch of playable characters who should have probably made their way into one of those. So it just feels like a continuation of that. The story is not really all that important. This is a beat-em-up. All you need to know is that the Foot Clan are bad, and it's your job as one of the Turtles, or April, or Splinter, or Casey Jones, to beat the shit out of them with whatever you happen to have. Like a lot of beat 'em ups, you do have to figure out the strategy. You're not just going to be successful by walking up to your enemy and punching them repeatedly. You're going to have to figure out how to actually get through it and play the different characters and everything. It is a lot of fun, and I was really excited when it came out, and I was even more excited to play it. Shining Force was a game that I wanted to go back and revisit because I had honestly forgotten quite a bit about the game. It had been a couple of decades since I had played through it, to be perfectly honest. It's kind of a hybrid of a tactical RPG and a JRPG, mostly because it allows you to kind of do a little exploration after the battles, and it's a little funky. I don't know if I totally like every part of it, but it is still a very fun game. This was one of the first tactical RPGs I can remember playing, and yeah, it wasn't as fun as I remember it, but it was still a ton of fun. I think now I prefer some of the Fire Emblem games, but Shining Force was still a great game to go back and revisit again. There isn't too much I can really add to what other people have said about Chrono Trigger. It is an absolutely wonderful game. It's got spectacular pixel art, the music is amazing, the story is very good, the characters are a lot of fun. I just really like everything that they were able to get into this game. The time traveling stuff is just loads of fun to play around with, and allows you to have a bunch of different endings that you didn't really see in other games, or at least you didn't really experience in other games that often, especially with how hard it is to get all the different endings. I have never gotten all of the different endings. I know what they are, I know how to get them, but I've just never been able to pull it off. Playing it again this year was just a ton of fun. The Quarry is one of those games that I was really looking forward to, and thankfully it did not disappoint at all. I've been a fan of Supermassive Games stuff for a while, especially since I played Until Dawn. Really liked that. I enjoyed some of the Dark Pictures anthology stuff, but not as much as I probably could have. I don't know about those. They were a little weird. So picking up The Quarry and getting a chance to play through that, it was a lot of fun, just like Until Dawn was. This is not as good, but it's still a lot of fun. Some of the plot twists were kind of predictable, but hey, it's a B-movie that's basically an interactive experience. So it was a ton of fun to play through and just sort of experience all the weird stuff in it. The Voice of Cards series is very quickly turning into something that I really enjoy. It's been a long time since I really got excited for stuff that Square Enix has done, but this kind of unconnected card battler tabletop-like RPG has been just a ton of fun. I really think that this one, of the three that have been released, this one is the best. So it was just a really fun entry in the series. This one isn't as funny as the first, but it doesn't take itself all that serious either. And it is just kind of fun to play through this thing, learn the different combat mechanics, figure out what the game expects you to be doing. It's just a ton of fun to sit down and play this. If you were looking for a game that was going to continue on with, Castlevania or something along those lines, this is a great Metroidvania. Infernax is just so much fun. It takes a side-scrolling open-world game that you might be getting sick of at this point, but it sort of does stuff with it that makes this just a lot more fun and brings it back to something that you might have seen in the 8 or the 16-bit era, but gives it much better graphics than that time period. The cutscenes in this are a lot of fun, the gameplay is a lot of fun. It can be frustrating at times, but Infernax is a really great game. The more I played Dune Spice Wars, the more I really started enjoying it a lot more. I remember thinking each of the four groups kind of played the same, and they still did at the time of me playing this, but it kind of felt fun to play a game in the Dune world. It had been a while since I had played a Dune game, mostly because I just hadn't tried and I hadn't really gone back to them, except for when I played Dune on the Sega Genesis. This felt like an evolution of that. It's not as good as Dune 2 or Emperor of Dune, but it is a lot of fun to play, and heck, it's a real-time strategy Dune game. Streets of Rage is just an absolutely wonderful game. Going back and playing it this year, I had so much fun with it. Just sitting back, punching people in the face, and not really caring too much about the story because it kind of feels like it has the same story as every beat-em-up from the late 80s, early 90s. It was just a ton of fun to go back, play through, and really just have a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of memories I have tied up with playing Streets of Rage and pretty much every other beat-em-up, but this one is just a great time. It's got wonderful graphics, great sound, and the gameplay is pretty solid, and even for a beat-em-up, didn't get too monotonous as I was playing. Pentiment is a lot of fun. It just harkens back to all of those great graphical adventures and point-and-click adventures from the 90s, and it sort of does a little bit more of a serious take on it, but not too serious. You are just moving your character around, experiencing the story as it unfolds, and creating your backstory for your character. It is a lot of fun to go through and play. I definitely recommend it, and it is one of the better games on Xbox Game Pass. So Plague Tale Requiem brings us back to the 100 Years' War, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Just like the first game, you have to do a lot of the same things. I generally hate stealth games and stealth missions, but for some reason, I really think this game did a great job with what it was doing. It is a ton of fun to play through. It can be frustrating at times. Sorry about that. But it looks great. It's a ton of fun to play, and I'm just really loving this series. I hope that there are more games, at least in this style or set at the same time period as this, because it's just a lot of fun to play. So this was my game of the year. I loved Monster Sanctuary. It was so much fun to play this, and to just see what would basically be like a 16 or a 32-bit Pokemon game, it was just wonderful to play this thing. I loved all the different characters or the creatures that you can find in this. I love the story of you being in this kind of secluded area, having to deal with a bunch of other people who want to break through and go to the real world. This was just so much fun to sit back and play. I was so happy when I discovered this game. And yeah, it's still my game of the year. I absolutely love Monster Sanctuary. It is definitely the best out of all the games on this list, at least in my opinion. So that is my list, guys. I do have a few honorable mentions here. Pokemon Yellow, World of Horror, Tactics Ogre Reborn. If I had a list of 16 games, then XCOM UFO Defense would have been on it. Stinger, the House of the Dead remake. The only reason the House of the Dead remake was not on this list and was not my game of the year was because there was no gun released with it. If there had been a light gun attachment or a better control scheme, that thing definitely would have been my game of the year. You also had Triangle Strategy, Evo: The Search for Eden, Golden Axe, and Final Fight. That pretty much rounds up my honorable mentions for this year. I know there are plenty of games that I probably should have included on this list or could have, but you can't play everything, and sometimes you just need to pick the games that are best for you. These games kind of represent that. Like, they're the ones that I enjoyed the most this year. It might be kind of strange to include retro games on a list like this, but hey, it's my list, and I was the one who made up all the weird rules for it. I'm looking forward to the games that I might be playing in 2023 and seeing what games other people enjoyed. Until next time, I will talk to you all later. Please leave your comments in the section below and let me know what your favorite games were this year. I will talk to you all later. Bye.